Section 2.1.8 Continuous Improvement as a Cultural Principle. Let me start with something that looks harmless at first. A system that works. Nothing is crashing. Users aren't complaining. Dashboards look calm. And someone says, almost proudly, "Let's not touch it. It's good enough." That sentence has ended more systems than bad code ever did. Not immediately, not loudly, but slowly. In DevOps, we learned that systems don't fail because they are bad. They fail because the world around them keeps moving while they stand still. Requirements change. Load changes. Threats change. Tools change. Expectations change. And the moment improvement stops, decay quietly begins. That's why continuous improvement exists. Not as a process you turn on once, not as a quarterly initiative, but as a habit the system lives by. The idea is simple. Tomorrow's system should be slightly better than today's. A bit safer, a bit faster, a bit easier to operate, a bit more resilient under pressure. No heroics, no revolutions, just progress. This way of thinking comes from Kaizen, a Japanese philosophy that treats improvement as something small, daily and intentional. And that detail matters more than most people realize, because continuous improvement is not a meeting. It's not a yearly review, and it's definitely not a slogan on a wall. It's culture. It's how teams behave when nobody is watching. Once you see it that way, many common misunderstandings disappear. People often imagine improvement as a one-time overhaul. Tear everything apart, rewrite the system, start fresh. In reality, that approach usually destroys trust and introduces new risks faster than it removes old ones. Real improvement happens in small, safe steps that compound over time. Others worry that continuous improvement removes specialized roles or turns everyone into a generalist. The opposite is true. Expertise remains, but learning stops being trapped in silos. Knowledge spreads instead of bottlenecking. And tools? Tools don't save systems by themselves. Without the right culture, they just make problems happen faster. Automation without learning is simply accelerated chaos. If this already feels more grounded than the buzzwords you're used to, that's intentional. We're talking about how systems actually survive in the real world. In real DevOps environments, improvement doesn't wait for permission. It happens constantly. After deployments, after incidents, after uncomfortable questions, teams reflect on what just happened. They run small experiments instead of big guesses. They measure outcomes instead of arguing opinions. And then they adjust. That's why improvement doesn't feel like a straight line forward. It feels like a spiral. You start with a baseline. You reflect on what's working and what isn't. You experiment with small changes that won't break trust. You measure what actually changed. And then you loop again. Each turn of the spiral looks modest on its own, but over time, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Think about learning a skill, playing an instrument, writing good code, even learning a language. Nobody improves in one leap. Progress comes from repetition, correction, and patience. Systems behave the same way. Every failed deployment becomes a lesson. Every slow pipeline reveals friction. Every incident contains information, if the team is willing to listen. And today, this matters more than ever. The world is changing fast. AI has accelerated workflows dramatically. Industry data shows productivity jumps of more than 50% when AI is introduced. That sounds exciting. But here's the uncomfortable truth. AI doesn't fix weak systems. It magnifies them. Organizations that already iterate well use AI as a force multiplier. Those that don't simply automate their existing dysfunction. The same delays, the same failures, the same blind spots, just faster. That's why continuous improvement quietly separates teams that scale from teams that stall. And this isn't just a feeling. The data supports it. Teams that practice continuous improvement deploy over 200 times more frequently. They experience roughly 7 times fewer change-related failures. When things do go wrong, they recover more than 100 times faster. Burnout drops significantly, and high-performing teams increasingly use AI not for shortcuts, but for iterative enhancements. These aren't promises. They're observed outcomes. That's why continuous improvement isn't a luxury. It's a survival strategy. You can see this clearly when you compare cultures. Static cultures say, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Continuous cultures say, everything can be improved. Static cultures fear experiments. Continuous cultures run small ones safely. Static cultures wait for incidents. Continuous cultures expect them and prepare. One mindset freezes. The other adapts, and adaptation is the real competitive advantage. In practice, this doesn't mean endless meetings or constant change for its own sake. It means focused cycles that respect both the system and the people running it. Teams reflect through blameless retrospectives, where the goal isn't to assign fault but to understand behavior. They experiment through small changes, A/B tests, and controlled chaos. They measure what matters. Not vanity metrics, but things like deployment frequency, recovery time, and flow efficiency. They map value streams to see where work actually gets stuck. And they share knowledge so learning compounds instead of resetting with every new incident. Over time, this process has quietly gained strong support from AI. It summarizes retrospectives, detects failure patterns, predicts risks, and connects signals across fragmented tool chains. But the core remains human. Curiosity, humility, discipline. There are traps, of course. Too much iteration becomes noise. Measuring the wrong things creates confusion. Improvement can turn into bureaucracy if it loses purpose. That's why intent matters. Improvement must stay focused, grounded, human. When it does, something interesting happens. Teams stop reacting randomly. Systems become calmer. Progress becomes predictable. That's when continuous improvement stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like momentum. Industry examples make this concrete. Netflix runs constant chaos experiments, which is why it can deploy changes daily while maintaining extreme reliability. Amazon refines pipelines continuously, shrinking lead time because every retrospective produces action, not paperwork. Etsy deploys thousands of times per year because learning is built into the system, not bolted on later. Even organizations that once stagnated have shifted by embracing iteration. Continuous improvement has literally saved systems, teams, and sometimes entire companies. This is also why interviewers care about the topic. Not because it sounds good, but because it reveals how you think. When someone asks how continuous improvement shows up in DevOps culture, they're not testing vocabulary. They're testing mindset. They want to hear about learning loops, small experiments, real metrics, and blameless environments. They want to know whether you understand that tools automate, but culture learns. And learning is what keeps systems alive. When you tie it all together, continuous improvement amplifies everything DevOps cares about. Feedback becomes faster. Collaboration becomes natural. Shift left stops being forced. AI becomes an accelerator instead of a liability. It's Kaizen as culture, AI as a multiplier, retrospectives as learning engines, data as a compass. Continuous improvement is DevOps' heartbeat. And once that heartbeat is strong, the next question becomes inevitable. If we can build this mindset into delivery, what happens when we extend it into security? That's where we go next. End of 2.1.8.